In other news, Sacramento waived rookie guard / 1992 All-Star Michael Adams.
Can't believe they waived him knowing he was a 1992 All-Star.
I know, it's
incredible.
Talk about a lack of foresight.
Why would they do that?
I always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina. I think it really helped him.
Spectacular player from the beginning.
You can see right away Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer.
And showed what an impact he was going to have on the league.
This is NB86, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls' 1986 NBA season. And now your hosts, Adam Ryan and Aaron Steen.
Welcome back to another episode of NB86. We're up to episode 6 in the series, Aaron. Thanks for being part of the show again, as always, mate. Welcome back to our regular listeners, and if you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. How are you today, Mr. Steen?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In all earnest, welcome to the world's greatest fans to NB86.
Hat tip, former guest of the show, dare I say, Ray Clay, the great dulcet tones of Ray Clay. Excitingly, I have news that we'll be reading a review that we received for this podcast series. We'll get to that later in this episode, but excited to read out the support we're getting from fans of the show, mate.
And listeners of the show can also pretty safely guess that it's positive feedback.
That's right.
Otherwise, they aren't hearing about it.
Very true. Before we get into the conversation, mate, we've actually got some trivia this week, which I'm astounded by, but equally very pleased by. So you mentioned before we were going to get recording today, you had a question you'd like to throw my way, and hopefully our listeners here will join in with me, and vice versa when I get to ask you a question. So what have you got for me? Well,
I think it's a fairly easy one, but it's too hard to see how much attention you're paying to your own notes. Who was the one team in the 85-86 season to defeat the Boston Celtics at home?
We mentioned it last episode.
That's correct.
Was it Portland?
It was indeed Portland.
Ah, nice. Yeah, they were the only team to defeat Celtics at home en route to their stellar 40-1 regular season. Okay, mate. Well, my question, now this one relates to the 1980s in general, and I did a bit of thinking about things, and I've gone with the following. Who played the most games for the Chicago Bulls in the 1980s? Now, it's not perhaps as simple as you may think, although you could just nail this immediately. To clarify, I haven't included the 1979-80 season. I'm just talking about from 80-81.
Thanks, man. That really helps.
through to 88-89. So it doesn't include anything into 90 or preceding that, anything into 1980.
Well, that really, really nails it down for me, doesn't it?
I can give you some multiple choice answers.
Yeah, okay, cool. Give me 3.
I've got 4.
All right, give me 4 then.
Do you want 4?
Give me 4.
Okay. In no particular order. David Greenwood, Orlando Woolridge, Dave Corzine, Michael Jordan.
Wow.
One of those 4 gents has played the most games for the Bulls in the 1980s.
If I hadn't have gone with the multiple choice, I actually would have said John Paxson.
Johnny Pax? I think from memory he was mid to high 200s because he came in like 86.
86, yeah, that's true. Out of those 4 guys, I'd probably have to say Dave Corzine.
It is Dave Corzine. Well done. Now, have a listen to this. If my stats are correct, courtesy of the mighty basketballreference.com, Dave Corzine played 592 games for the Bulls from 1983 through 1989. 4 times he played all 82 regular season games, once 81 games, and another time 80 games, adding in a few playoff games, of course, and one season, the one we're chatting about in this series, NB86. Next up was David Greenwood with 392.
Surprising.
Yeah, from 1981 through 85. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, 371 games. And Orlando Woolridge, 361. So, had I been given those 4 names, I might have gone Corzine, then Jordan, then Woolridge, and maybe Greenwood.
Definitely.
But, yeah, Dave by 200 exactly over the second place, David Greenwood. So, I thought that was a pretty cool stat.
I think we spoke about in NB85 that Dave actually played 7 consecutive seasons with the Bulls, and for all of his detractors and all of the hate that he got from the fans at Chicago Stadium, he must have been doing something right to play for the team for 7 consecutive seasons.
Oh, for sure, mate. Absolutely love Dave Corzine, and hopefully he'll appear on the show at some stage.
NBA News, Notes and Quotes, December 9th through 23rd, 1985.
On December 9, the Bulls United flight touched down at O'Hare, and Dave Corzine awoke from a 2-hour nap to ask, what city are we in now? This after the Bulls' 14-day, 9-city odyssey that had the team joking that by the time they get home, Sydney Green's newborn baby would walk up to him and tell him he'd seen him on TV. The bright spots in the 2-7 9-game road trip were the scoring of Paxson, Daly and Macy and the 27 blocks in 9 games from Juwan Oldham. The Bulls had 13 of 17 at home from this point on, with Jordan expected back midway through that stretch.
Wow. Speaking of stretch, that really is a stretch.
On December 10, the frustrations of a rough fortnight on the road boiled over at practice at the multiplex, where I was able to try to get a few shots up, actually, just in Chicago last year myself.
Humble brag.
As Sid Green and Quinton Daly had to be separated. Peacemaker Mike Smrek almost had his jersey torn off him as Q went after Sydney. Bob Sakamoto's article spoke of Green's altercations in the previous year, which included Jim Peterson in Houston the previous week, David Greenwood in practice last year, Scott Hastings' face last season, and the altercations with Tree Rollins and Alton Lister.
Wow, he is really starting to branch out.
He was.
Fights with Tree Rollins.
With the Spurs in town up next, Stanley joked that he may start the, and I quote, San Antonio connection again at Chicago Stadium, a move that almost had the San Antonio fans confused as to who they should be cheering for, wrote Bob Sakamoto. George Gervin commented on how much he enjoyed sticking it to his former coach, Cotton Fitzsimmons.
No love lost between those guys. That's funny. New York held the visiting Pacers to just 64 points. It was the fewest points that were scored in an NBA game for 13 years in their 18-point win. Speaking of the number 18, Patrick Ewing paced the Knicks with 18 points and 18 rebounds. At Richfield Coliseum in Cleveland, Detroit defeated the Cavs by 10 points. Kelly Tripucka had 26 points for the Pistons and World B. Free dropped 30 for the hometown Cavs. Most notable, the game was delayed for 5 minutes after Cleveland fans threw debris on the court following the ejection of NB85 podcast favourite Phil Hubbard. Now, mate, I've been thinking about this since, and it had to have been rubbish that was picked up at the arena because most all Cavs fans' cupboards would have certainly been bare. A 4-point home win over Atlanta bettered Boston's record to 18-3. Dominique's 20 second half points and 32 overall almost helped his Hawks overcome a 15-point deficit. Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish had 24 apiece for the Celtics. That night, December 10, at Chicago Stadium, it was the return match of the Bulls versus Spurs, arguably the highlight of Episode 5 of this NB86 series. In an attempt to entice downtown workers to the game, tip-off was at 6 p.m, dubbed the Businessman's Special, a ploy that the Bulls also planned for a February game versus the visiting Trailblazers. The crowd was only 7,892, it should be noted, so a very non-businessman-like crowd, and the Spurs held on to win 109-107, and the Bulls' record dropped to 8-17. For the Bulls, Orlando Woolridge and Quinton Daly had 25 points each, and Dave Corzine contributed 12 rebounds. For San Antonio, Alvin Robinson had 29 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals. Now, this season was an absolute breakout year. He was an 86 All-Star, he was the Defensive Player of the Year, and won Most Improved Player. So what a phenomenal feat there for Alvin Robinson. One-time Chicago Bull, Steve Johnson had 24 points and 13 rebounds. Kiki Vandeweghe played the role of hero, hitting 2 free throws after time had expired. Hat tip there to Rolando Blackman, giving his Trailblazers a 94-92 win over the travelling Golden State Warriors.
On the game at Chicago Stadium, Bob Sakamoto wrote, Q was Michael Jordan for a night. Daly shot 10 for 19 on his way to 25 points and 6 assists. but missed a 17-foot baseline jumper late that would have tied the game. The sack said if Q had defenders all over him that he would have hit it. It's the wide-open jumpers that Q has trouble with. Chicago led the entire game until Johnny Moore's bucket with 52 seconds left put the Spurs up for good. Orlando was again benched in the fourth quarter, much to his frustration, as he told reporters to ask Allback why he was sitting down the stretch. Former Bull David Greenwood admired the work of his best friend on the Bulls, Quinton Daly, and said once MJ returns that they'll be in the hunt for a playoff spot.
Yeah, not wrong. Sacramento at Boston lost 118-101, and the Celtics continued their fantastic start to the season, improving to 19-3. Now we're chatting about December 11 here. Bird watchers were treated to a great performance, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists and 4 steals, all in a night's work for Larry Legend. Sacramento's 25-year-old rookie, Carl Henry, led their Kings with 18 points in just 17 minutes. A minutiae alert here. He scored a total of 78 NBA points in 29 games during this sole NBA season.
I wonder why he was a 25-year-old rookie.
Not sure what the background is there, mate, but he had 18 points in this game. Could score, but not sure the circumstances behind that one. Phoenix's Walter Davis dropped 43 points, the equal second highest output of his career. His career high was actually 45 in the 87 season. In the Suns' 123-113 victory at Golden State. In short, Purvis led all Warriors scorers with 26 points. In Denver, the Nuggets trounced the LA Clippers 134-95, with his team only ahead by 39 points. Doug felt it was the right moment to have his regular rotation take a seat. Fat Lever was scoreless, yet he had 14 assists. Alex English led his team in points with 24, and minutes played, just 27. The Clippers' high man was Franklin Edwards, who had 15.
Household name Franklin Edwards.
Indeed.
On December 12, Bob Verdi wrote of the cast-breaking ceremony at a secret location to see if Michael Jordan's foot had healed. This was after the Bulls, as you mentioned before, Businessman Special promotion drew only 7,892 fans to Chicago Stadium for the Bulls game versus San Antonio after the stadium had been unwisely committed to elephants, pooper scoopers, and Linda Frat and Linda for essentially a month, leading to the Bulls' 2-week nightmare of a road trip. A road trip that even coach Mount St. Allback said he'd never experienced before.
A, I'm sorry to have stole your thunder about the Businessman Special. But B, apologies to Linda for mispronouncing or even butchering or not even attempting your surname. I got a bit more information about that cast-breaking ceremony that you referred to there, mate. The Chicago Tribune had a photo of a suited up, well, in a business suit, might have been one of the 7,892 fans at the game, Michael Jordan sitting courtside with some crutches next to him. And Bob Verdi's article was titled Bulls Lack More Than, and a capital H, Himself. And it went on to say, sometime Thursday at a secret location, himself will roll up the left leg of himself's pants and submit professional sports' most famous navicular, I'd never be a doctor, tarsal bone to medical scrutiny. Actually, Verdi didn't say that he'd never be. The Bulls will hold their breaths, hopefully better than they can hold onto the ball. For this cast-breaking ceremony shall determine whether Michael Jordan has healed.
Big news.
It is. Now, actually, looking at the Wilmington Morning Star, or the Star News back in that day, they actually had a December 13 article which actually put the kibosh on the cast-breaking ceremony, and it said that Jordan was told to keep his cast 2 more weeks.
Oh, really?
So it actually didn't happen on that Thursday that we were talking about. Basically, it said that the cast was to be taken off, but an examination revealed the bone in the left foot hadn't healed. Dr. John Hefferon, the team physician, had said. So anyhow, mate, the cast-breaking ceremony did not take place.
Thank you to the Chicago Tribune for leading us up the garden path on that one.
It's only just whilst I was getting set with final preparations for our recording today that I found that subsequent article in another paper, so I'll include that in the show notes of this episode, which can be found at inallairness.com/NB86-6. December the 12th, Philadelphia at Chicago in front of another rather lowly crowd, 11,123, particularly given the team that's visiting. The Bulls held on to defeat the Sixers 106-102, and the Bulls' record improved to 9-17. For Chicago, Sidney Green, who was a man possessed during this period of time, had 22 points and 14 rebounds. Iceman had 19 points. O and Q had 18 points apiece. And for Philadelphia, Barkley had an absolute ripper, 25 points and 13 boards. Dr. J had 24 points. Moses had 18 points and 10 boards. And the 76ers were 12 and 11 after this loss. And their regular season, they'd actually finish up a very impressive, given their particular start to the season, 54 and 28. Spoiler alert. Quick aside here, Charles Barkley as a rookie, 14 points a game, along with 8.6 rebounds and 1.9 assists in just under 29 minutes a game. In this 86 season, he upped that to 20 points a game, 12.8 rebounds, and 3.9 assists in 37 minutes a game, of course, so increased minutes, but still a great increase from that first to second season.
Good numbers from Chuck in his sophomore year.
Indeed.
An 8-game losing streak to Philadelphia brought a big victory, big news, and big smiles all round, wrote Bob Sakamoto. MJ dropped by the locker room pre-game with some lively banter that may have fired up his teammates, along with the new practice methods of Stalag Stan Allback. Allback had begun increasing the intensity and physical play in Bulls practice, which even led to a skirmish between Q and Sid Green during the week. Allback applauded the Bulls' rebounding post-game, in particular a key offensive board late in the game by Orlando Woolridge, which sealed the win.
We've got a number of nicknames here for Stan Allback as the season's progressed, and we're not really even that far into it. He's already been called 3 or 4 absolute rippers.
I'm not sure how I'm going to fit all of the other nicknames onto the back of the T-shirt this year.
No, that's right. It's going to be difficult. Might have to order them in triple extra large.
Hello to Charles Barkley if you're listening.
Cliff Robinson's jumper with 1 second left in overtime secured his Washington Bullets 110-108 win versus Milwaukee. The Bucks' Craig Hodges, future Chicago Bull, forced overtime with a late three-pointer. He finished the game with 29 points on 3 of 3 from downtown and also had 7 rebounds, 4 assists and a couple of steals. Washington's leading scorer, Jeff Ruland, was missing the first of 22 games after he broke his right ankle in the previous day's game at Detroit. In his first professional start, Manute Bol replaced Jeff Ruland and notched up 18 points and a club record 12 blocks and 9 rebounds.
In his first start.
Almost had a trip-double in his first start as a rook. I'll preface the following stats here, mate, with this. Stats for blocks have been compiled since the 73-74 NBA season. Manute Bol is second all-time for most blocks in a season, and it's this 86 season when he had 397.
In his rookie year.
Yes.
Wow.
Ridiculous. Mark Eaton, podcast guest in episode 49 of the show, in allanis.com/49, is the all-time leader with 456, and we covered that in some depth in NB85. Not surprisingly then, the highest average of blocks per game for a single season. Number 1 overall, the Washington Bullets as a team averaged 8.73 blocks per game in this 85-86, and the second all-time were the 84-85 Utah Jazz with 8.5 blocks per game. Now, a bit more quick minutia gold. In New Jersey's 108-85 win at New York, the Nets' Otis Birdsong left his road uniform at home and didn't start the game. When a uniform was found, it was actually too late, almost half-time, and he didn't play. Otis would start more than 70 games in this season.
The other players had to bring their own uniforms, I'm assuming.
So I'm assuming the Nets equipment manager was fired or had yet to be hired. One or the other.
Whichever.
The LA Lakers belted the road-weary Phoenix Suns. Only one win on the road all season to this point. 127-102. And not helping the Suns' cause was Magic Johnson's equal season high of 20 assists and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hitting all 11 of his field goal attempts. Larry Nance was the sole ray of golden sun for Phoenix with 23 points and 9 rebounds.
Bob Sakamoto wrote a separate article about MJ's return to the Bulls locker room on December 13. saying that the fun was back for at least one night with the good-natured clowning around of Michael Jordan. MJ had learned earlier in the day that the broken bone in his foot still hadn't mended properly, meaning 4 more weeks on the sidelines. Jordan said he chose not to travel with the team because his presence would detract from their stellar 9-17 record. I added that last bit, not MJ. Jordan also said that he believed Gene Riverbanks, who was playing in the place of Orlando late in games, was the team's leader at this point.
All right, that's good to note. On the 13th, Denver ended LA Lakers' 8-game win streak with a 124-120 win at home. The Lakers dropped to 19-3. How's this nugget of info? 2 losses at the hands of Denver. 14-year veteran Wayne Cooper had a career-high 32 points for the winners, along with 10 rebounds and 4 blocks. Alex English starred with 300 points. 300 points!
Wow.
Wow. Wilt who? English had 30 points, actually. Sorry about that. Time for a fat lever watch. 300 points. I will probably have to edit that out. I might not, though. Fat lever. 18 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals.
And that tremendous stat line will appear in our new series, In All Fat.
This was Doug Moe's 400th NBA victory as coach. James had a big game for the Lakers with 37 points, and I've since learnt that his career high was 40 points in Game 4 of the 1989 NBA Finals.
I never heard that big game James had a 50-point game, but yeah, I actually thought that maybe he could have peeled something off a little higher than a 40.
Interestingly, Game 4 of the 89 Finals, which of course was a very low point for the Lakers franchise, even though they made the finals, it was Kareem's final game and they got swept. In Oakland, the Trailblazers' Jim Paxson hit a 30-footer as the buzzer sounded in overtime, and Portland prevailed 127-124. He tallied 33 points for the game. Paxson boys could shoot the ball, and their father, of course, a former pro too, back in the halcyon days of the NBA. Now, on December 14, Will B. Free's 22 points helped Cleveland defeat the visiting Celtics 109-99. For the 19-4 Boston Celtics, Bird had 31 points and 11 rebounds. Sacramento at Chicago, in front of another ordinary crowd, it must be said, 8,823. Saw the Kings 108 defeat the Bulls 103. So the Bulls' record was 9-18. For Chicago, Sidney Green had 21 points and 14 rebounds. Orlando Woolridge had 20 points and Kyle Macy 13 points and 13 assists. For Sacramento, former Bull Reggie Theus 21 points, 6 rebounds, 11 assists and 2 steals. Thank you very much. Eddie Johnson, 19 points, former podcast guest, friend of the show. And Mark Olberding had 17 points, 5 rebounds and 5 assists, whilst LaSalle Thompson had 15 points and 14 boards.
On the back of Bob Sakamoto's article about MJ's cheerful return to the Bulls following the loss to Sacramento, it was said that several of his teammates voiced their disappointment in his lack of moral support during his time off the court. In 7 home games since his injury, Jordan had joined his teammates only twice. During the game on November 24, when John Paxson was being rammed into the basketball by Darren Day, Jordan was shown sitting next to Dean Smith at a Tar Heels game in Chapel Hill.
Oh, that's cool.
GM Jerry Krause had reportedly requested that Jordan join the team in Phoenix during their torturous 9-game 14-day road trip, only to have Jordan refuse.
Second-year player refusing the GM of his team. On the 15th, Sacramento at Milwaukee. Not much to say here, aside from the fact that the Bucks won in an absolute demolition job, 140-82. So it was a 58-point win. Milwaukee were up by 30 at the half. The Chicago Tribune reported that Bucks fans at times were chanting defense, defense when Sacramento had the ball. Now that is the ultimate in trolling back in the 1980s. The NBA's all-time largest margin of victory actually was December 17, 1991. Cleveland defeated the Miami Heat 148-80. The Cavs had 8 players in double figures. Price and Battle had 18 points apiece, whilst Steve Smith led Miami with 15 points. Bulls and Celtics had the first game in a home-and-home series on this same date. Chicago at Boston in front of 14,890 fans saw the Celtics hold on to win 109-104. The Bulls were 9-19 with the loss, and the Celtics were 20-4. For the Bulls, Orlando Woolridge had a great game, 26 points. Sid Green had 17 points and 16 rebounds, and Dave Corzine, 15 points and 9 rebounds. For Boston, Legend had 34 points, 13 rebounds and 4 assists. Kevin McHale had a great game, 27 points, 11 boards and 6 assists. DJ had 23 points and Chief 5 points and 15 boards.
Another apple crumble by the Bulls down the stretch as the Celtics ratcheted up the intensity, forcing the Bulls into rush shots and 2 24-second violations down the stretch of the game. Allback went with the lineup that had gotten the job done for the Bulls, getting them to a 183-94 lead with 4:52 left, only to have them tire late in the game. Orlando was a notable omission from the court down the stretch as the Bulls failed to score for 4 minutes and 38 seconds at the end of the game. Even Celtics players showed surprise at him not being out there. A third straight big game by Sid Green went to waste, and he refused to answer questions from the press in the locker room after the game. The pressure of the moment got to the Bulls as Sid Green sat on the bench in the fourth quarter and simply screamed into the air above him, and Coach Allback sat staring at his players for 20 seconds during a timeout before finally figuring out a substitution.
Wow, not great times there for the Bulls. I was just wondering, as you were talking about that, why Orlando would sit down for that period of time, but also the Bulls were up 9 with less than 5 minutes to go and yet couldn't eke out a victory. Yeah, disappointing. There were no games on the 16th of December.
In a rare Christmas treat for Bulls fans, the Bulls game versus the Knicks on December 26 would be carried live on free TV. The first Bulls game that had been shown on free TV other than playoff games.
That's cool.
In the lead up to that night's game, the second of a home-and-home series against Boston, Bob Sakamoto's headline wrote, "Bulls will lean on green again against Celtics."
Like the wordplay there.
Late in the Celtics' 109-104 win at Boston Garden 2 nights before, Q and DJ found a way to beat the heat of the pressurized finish to the game. DJ walked up to Q and said to him, "So you think you're unstoppable?" In response, Q gave Johnson a deadpanned yes before the two started laughing. In Sid Green's last 3 games, he was averaging 20 points and 16 rebounds as Chicago outboarded the Celtics front line of Parrish, Bird and McHale 49-44 in that game.
Sidney Green had a fantastic run of games here. I think he's a Bulls ambassador to this day. And yeah, what a great effort here. On the 17th of December, the newly minted Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, even though he is allegedly retiring a season prior, led his Lakers into New York, where LA held off the impressive rookie Patrick Ewing and his Knicks 105-99. Patrick had 28 points for the Knickerbockers. The captain dropped 26 for Los Angeles. Boston at Chicago in the return meeting in front of 13,786 saw the Bulls hold on for a 116-108 win, a great win, increasing their record to 10-19, and the Celtics dropping to 20-5. For Chicago, Woolridge had an absolute blinder, 37 points, 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Sid Green continuing his great play, 15 points and 10 boards. And Jawan Oldham, 8 points, 12 rebounds and 5 blocks. For Boston, DJ had 25 points and 8 assists. McHale, 24 points and 9 rebounds. Parrish had 22 points, 15 boards. And Bird, 12 points, 12 boards and 6 assists. Houston's Lewis Lloyd, a.k.a. Black Magic, one of the great nicknames there, hat tip to basketballreference.com, dialed up a career-high 38 points in Cleveland as the Rockets held on for a 98-94 win. The 7-year vet had 20... He actually wasn't a vet for 7... He had 25 second-half points. Moving on.
On the 18th, Orlando Woolridge held a players-only meeting after Tuesday's shoot-around to air out some of his frustrations. Maybe the Bulls should do that more often, wrote Bob Sakamoto, as the 9-19 Chicago Bulls knocked off the mighty 1986 Boston Celtics. Mind you, Bob didn't write 1986 Celtics. That just would have been weird. 116-108 at Chicago Stadium. On reviewing game tapes of the Bulls' loss 2 days beforehand in Boston, Stanley Allback admitted he made a mistake in not having Woolridge on the court late in the game. The Bulls broke away from Boston by hitting their first 7 shots of the third term, and Woolridge hit 7 straight of his own. Boston came to within 92-91 with 7:37 remaining, but big Bulls baskets by O, Paxson and Green kept the Celtics at bay. Even when Boston resorted to fouling Chicago in the last 90 seconds, the Bulls hit 12 straight foul shots down the stretch. With 8:06 left, the stadium crowd began chanting, "We want O." At one point late in the third term, Juwan Oldham blocked consecutive shots by Bird, Walton and Parrish, which led to 2 Woolridge baskets.
Nice.
With Oldham's one-man SWAT routine behind him, Woolridge played aggressive defense on the reigning MVP, who hit just 5 of 17 from the field.
And we've seen in games that we've watched on tape from the 85 and into the 86 season how good that crowd at Chicago Stadium could be in games where they really got up and played well. Even without being a complete sellout, the crowd would just go absolutely burlesque.
Could you imagine having seen a game there at Chicago Stadium?
I would have loved... 1994 I did.
In other news, Krause announced that on clearing waivers, the Bulls would be signing guard Billy McKinney as an assistant coach / scout for the remainder of the season. And Sacramento waived rookie guard / 1992 All-Star Michael Adams.
Can't believe they waived him knowing he was a 1992 All-Star.
I know. It's
incredible.
Talk about a lack of foresight.
Why would they do that? We did allude to the Billy McKinney situation in our previous episode, mate, so good to see we're following up on that.
Bulls scout Mike Thibault was convinced that after watching Bullets rookie Manute Bol outplay the NBA's block shots leader Mark Eaton, that Bol was for real. The Bulls had Bol and the Bullets. That's quite a mouthful.
I'm saying that 7 times fast. I don't know why it's not 10 times fast. He's 7'7", so it makes sense.
Had Bol and the Bullets up next at home, and Minute 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 blocks versus Eaton impressed Thibault no end. Washington starting centre Jeff Ruland had gone down with a fractured ankle the previous week, moving Minute into the starting lineup. And as you mentioned before, against Milwaukee, Bol played all 48 minutes in his first start and had 18 points and 12 blocks, including 8 blocks in the first quarter alone.
Extraordinary.
Milwaukee coach Don Nelson called it the most dominating performance by one player that he had ever seen, as All-Stars Terry Cummings and Sid Moncrief shot 4 for 25 and 2 for 15 for the game, respectively. Moncrief was to be used as ball bait in the game, taking the ball at Bol to get him in foul trouble.
You've done well to get through this.
I know.
You're doing well, mate, because there's quite a lot of alliteration going on here.
But Sid had never encountered a guy 15 inches taller than him with hands that can grasp both ends of the backboard simultaneously. That's a stat right there for you.
Mm.
Chicago Bulls GM Krause said that the team considered taking Bol in the second round of the NBA draft, but thought Mike Smrek would be the better long-term prospect.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing, as we like to say.
Mm.
On the 18th, Boston amassed its highest scoring game of the season, disposing of the visiting Mavericks 137-117. Bird torched Dallas for 35 points, 8 boards, 10 assists and 3 steals. Rolando Blackman, never one to lack confidence, scored 21 for the Mavs. Rookie Detlef Schrempf, must be the first mention of the great Detlef, had 20 points and 9 boards.
Don't you mean Rolando Blackman never want to lack confidence, baby confidence?
That's what I was alluding to, but I don't often say baby. Anyhow, moving on, baby. On the 19th, strange happenings in Atlanta, mate. You'll love this. In Dallas's 120-108 win, the Mavericks' Mark Aguirre refused to re-enter the game after coach Dick Motta benched him in the second quarter for helping his friend, human highlight film Dominic Wilkins, to his feet following a hard collision between the two. Motta and Aguirre had history dating back to previous seasons. Neek notched 29 points for the Hawks. and there would be repercussions to that too. So Strange, even showing some sign of humility and lifting up his friend from the floor, got benched and refused to re-enter the game.
Take that, Dick.
Awkward. Cleveland, visiting New York, were led by the second highest scoring game of Melvin Turpin's career, 29 points. The Cavs won by 4, 109 to 105. Ewing had 28 points at 15 rebounds. Turpin's career high of 32 points would be less than 3 months hence, also against the New York Knicks.
You might like to say that in the 85-86 season, Mel really answered the dinner bell.
He did, and that was one of his great nicknames, Dinner Bell, Mel Turpin. Rest in peace. Also on the 19th, Washington at Chicago in front of 9,279 fans saw the Bullets defeat Chicago 98-92. Disappointing loss. Bulls dropped to 10-20 on the year. For Chicago, Daly had 31 points, Orlando 15 points and 9 boards, and Gene Banks 13 points and 7 rebounds. For Washington, Cliff Robinson 27 points and 17 boards, Dan Roundfield 13 points and 11 boards, and Manute Bol 3 points, 13 rebounds and 7 blocks. At home, Alex English's 44-point performance secured a 123-118 Denver win over the visiting Trailblazers of Portland. Alex English scored only 1 point through the first quarter.
In all, Bol, episode 1, rookie Manute Bol wasn't too impressed with Juwan Oldham's comments in the media that he was going to dunk on Manute during the game against the Bullets, and even responded with a dunk of his own right on Oldham's head. Juwan was impressed at Manute's ability to block shots without moving, as Chicago shot just 37% for the game.
Quickly butt in here, mate. There's going to be some future follow-up to do with Juwan Oldham and Manute Bol, and it culminates with an incredible sequence at Chicago Stadium in a future game in this 86 season where Bol and Oldham get into fisticuffs and start throwing absolute haymakers. It is quite extraordinary, and there is footage online, but we'll talk about that more in a future episode. Bit of a teaser there.
The other fracas, it moves its way towards the other scorers table, and I really feel for the guys who were at the scorers table working for the Bulls, as you've got 7-foot Juwan Oldham and 7'7" Manute Bol. It would have been actually a pretty scary situation for them.
Players almost bowled over most of the scoring table. Anyhow, moving on.
Thanks, Jim. It was reported that Michael Jordan was second at this point in Eastern Conference All-Star voting behind Detroit's Isaiah Thomas. Before the upcoming game against the Utah Jazz, Bulls greats such as Norm Van Leer and Jerry Sloan would be taking part in the Bulls' 20th anniversary reunion game. Van Leer said that the last time he guarded Jerry Sloan, they got into a fight.
Oh, something to look forward to.
A draft was held for the game.
Probably a Miller Genuine draft. And Johnny Kerr's team consisted of Jerry Sloan, Roland Garrett, Dwight Jones, Gar Hurd, Tom Ballwinkle, Dennis Autry, Wilbur Holland, Len Benbow, and Erwin Wolfgang Mueller. Some great names in amongst there.
Bob Butterbean Love's team included Van Leer, Bob Boozer, Jack Marin, Robert Wilkerson, Clifford Ray, Tate Armstrong, Jim King, and McCoy McLemore.
He's done very well for himself. He went on to have a very good musical career in the 2010s.
And is also currently playing for the Sacramento Kings, so that's very well done.
Multi-talented, and he must be surely pushing 35, 40 years old.
War stories were exchanged, the best of which was when the 6'1" Van Leer picked up a chair and went after 6'8" Sydney Wicks of Portland during a game.
Was it a wicker chair? You've got some good stats there, mate. The fallout from Aguirre's decision at Atlanta led to the Mavs brass suspending him for 2 games. Mark had hinted at the possibility of a trade, and whilst I'm paraphrasing, he was all but appalled at the decision. In the same day's Tribune, it was reported that CBS had come to terms with the NBA for a new 4-year TV contract, which guaranteed them exclusive NBA coverage throughout the 89-90 season. And then NBC would take over for the magical 1990-91 campaign. On the 21st, Utah at Chicago in front of 10,823 fans saw the Bulls defeat Utah 117-104. The Bulls were 11-20 with the win. For Chicago, George Gervin, 21 points and 6 rebounds. Quinton Daly, 20 points. And Sid Green, 18 points, 15 boards and 3 cans of spinach. Utah, Adrian Dantley had 20 points and 5 boards. Carl the Mailman Malone, 19 points and 10 rebounds. Mark Eaton, 11 points, 8 rebounds and 8 blocks. And Little John Stockton, as he's referred to by Hot Rod Hundley, rest in peace, 4 points and 9 assists.
Hammer dunk! And now, as a ode to Hot Rod Hundley, I will now be reading my next paragraph in Hot Rod's voice. The synchronization on court of Ice and Q follow through to the post game in the locker room as the two even smell the same. When Gervin offered up some of his cologne to Daly.
Oh my goodness. This is derailing rather quickly.
Now we even smell alike, said the Iceman. Gervin led the Bulls in scoring in the first and third terms, while Q, the second and fourth, on their way to 21 and 20 points respectively. Aside from the sweet-smelling duo, the Bulls also dominated with 24 offensive rebounds, 9 alone from Popeye Green.
Oh, you got to love it, baby. Atlanta fans got their money's worth as they watched Dominique Wilkins hit for a then career-high 49 points, including the go-ahead three-pointer with 8 seconds left and a follow-up steal that secured the win as the Hawks held on to beat the visiting Rockets of Houston 123-122. Lewis Lloyd had 34 points for Houston. Maurice Cheeks' 26 points and 14 assists steered his hometown 76ers to a huge 108-102 win over the Boston Celtics. It was Philadelphia's fourth straight victory. For the 21-6 Celts, McHale had a monster game, 34 points and 10 rebounds. Larry had 29, 8 and 6. In Denver, the Spurs' Alvin Robinson eviscerated the Nuggets for a career-high 41 points in a 128-118 win. He also tallied 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 steals and 1 block. Now that is extraordinary stuff. Alex English had 31 points for Denver, and Artis Gilmore eclipsed 23,000 career points. That's ABA and NBA included.
So at this time, the Celtics were 21-6. So that means for the rest of the season, they went 46-9.
Yeah, because they finished 67-15. So that makes sense. We both passed grade 5 maths. Good stuff.
Very well.
Although on the spur of the moment, that's pretty good effort from us.
From the where the heck did that come from file, Stan Orbach has plans to start MJ at small forward on his return. This made it to the papers apparently without much consultation with current starting power forward Sid Green. Green's strong recent play didn't exactly spell a move to the bench yet. Orbach seemed keen to go with a starting lineup of Oldham, Woolridge, Jordan, Gervin and Macy on Michael's return. Even MJ was saying in the accompanying article that he'd never played much back-to-the-basket defense on small forwards and might struggle with bigger guys like Bird and Worthy. Grand plans for a guy who hadn't played since late October and had a mending broken bone in his foot. But Stanley seemed to like the idea of starting George Gervin.
Yeah, I actually came across this article in another newspaper that I was researching for today. And yeah, it's quite astounding that that was a possibility whilst MJ was on the mend from that broken bone. Now, to wrap things up, mate, we're almost there. Players of the week, December 15, Alvin Robinson of San Antonio averaged 22 points, 6 boards, 5 assists and 4.3 steals as the Spurs went 2-2. December 22, Larry Nance of Phoenix had 32 points, 10.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists and 1.3 steals and 1 block per game as his Suns went 3-0. Now, for the individual highs, Dominique Wilkins had 49 points versus Houston on the 21st of December. James Donaldson of Dallas grabbed 22 boards versus Denver on the 14th of December. And the Magic Man, Irvin Johnson, had 20 assists versus the Phoenix Suns on the 12th of December. The NBA standings through December 23, our division leaders were, we apparently own the league. The Boston Celtics led the Atlantic with a 21-6 record. In the Central, Milwaukee were 19 and 12. In the Midwest, Houston and Denver were equal leaders at 18 and 11. And in the Pacific Division, the Lakers were 24 and 3. The Bulls were at 11 and 20. They went 3 and 4 during this 7-game span. And the league's lowest team was the Indiana Pacers, who were ST ruggling at 8 and 19. Mate, before we do end the episode, let's go through this quick review we received. A great review, short and sweet, from a gentleman, I can only assume it's not his real name, Buey Hohang, from the Australian iTunes store. And the review is titled Basketball Dorks. Love it. 5-star review, no less. Thank you, Buey Hohang. He says, really enjoying the podcast so far, guys. Can't wait for NB88 for the arrival of Pip. So there we go, mate. We're progressing through NB86, and Buey Hohang's already hanging out, dare I say, no pun intended, for NB88.
Well, first of all, no pressure on us to continue this through to NB88, and also I'm assuming that calling us NBA Dorks is a compliment.
Basketball Dorks, definitely a compliment. I'll take it as a compliment, no doubt about that. So thank you, and we always relish reviews. Definitely makes it all the more worthwhile. All right, mate. That's the end of episode 6 of this series. Thanks again for being a part of the show as always. Would you like to have any parting words before we do wrap it up?
As always, yes.
I'm not sure why I always segue with those words, but anyhow, go ahead.
We had a bit of a discussion just the other night, you, me, and our mate Todd Spear, about Manute Bol, and Todd brought up the other point that Manute was the butt of a lot of jokes during his NBA career because of his very unusual frame and background as well, I'm sure. But I've been, and I'm going to be more than happy to try to bring up any Manute highlights, because what he did as an NBA player, as a guy coming from where he did, was just absolutely extraordinary. And what Don Nelson said in that game against the other Washington Bullets, when he called it the most dominant individual performance that he'd ever seen, that was very fitting for what he did in that game, and also I think the impact that he had on the NBA. So the first time I ever saw Manute was in a game in 1990-91 at Boston Garden, where pre-game Ahmad Rashad held up a straw broom over his head to exhibit Manute's immense reach. And the first time I ever saw him on court, he just captured my imagination, and I've been a fan ever since.
Beautifully said, mate. I do remember Ahmad holding up that broom. Got some sweet memories of that. Also, actually, speaking of Ahmad did play in an exhibition game as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers, and Manute Bol set one of the picks, which actually let Ahmad score his possibly only 2 points in the NBA.
He did.
From the University of Bridgeport, standing 7 feet 7 inches tall, the Sudanese shot blocker, Manute Bol. Rest in peace.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show. Alex English's 44-point performance secured a 123-118 Denver win. English had just 1 point after the first quarter. Good effort there from Alex.
So he scored 43 in the first and then had just 1 point after the first quarter. Wow.
Have I read that wrong? You're right. Oh, you're right. So he set an NBA record in the first quarter.
43 in a quarter.
Far out. English had...
No, just leave it.
No, that's right. The way I've worded it is still right. He had just 1 point after one quarter.
After the first quarter.